and welcome to That's What Speaks. Today is December 23rd, and this is episode 286. I am Amy Beth. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. Lighting will be a little challenging today. Thank you for being patient. That's why I'm not wearing my specs. It's not because I magically am sighted. But we are on the wax of the light returning. I have mixed feelings. I mean, obviously I want the light to return somewhere in my heart, but I do enjoy the solitude that the darkness has. It's really not the darkness, but I just enjoy the contemplative, winter times. And it's going to be winter, technically, astrologically. We just started winter, so, but, I have mixed feelings. Talk to me in February. I'll be on board. But anyway, so yes, we have a bit of a challenge because we're going to have some very cloudy weather coming in. So that's why we're kind of recording a bit earlier. We are with my first cup of coffee. Lighting's a little wonky, but I wanted to get us in before we have a very, very gray few days coming up. So I'm glad you came over. There's coffee, there's tea, there's leftover birthday cake because yesterday was Joe's birthday. It's carrot cake. She made it herself. What else? I made shortbread last night, so there's pecan shortbread. By the way, okay, some of you are probably. I offered to make the birthday cake. She wanted to make her own birthday cake. We're not huge birthday people in our house, in our family in general. I always feel kind of bad admitting that for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. In our culture, sometimes there's this really big emphasis on birthdays. And I feel like if you don't live up to that emphasis on birthdays, you're somehow saying you don't love the person as much, which is just really not true at all, obviously. But sometimes I let that messaging get confused in my head. We've just when I was growing up, it was just not, I mean, we would celebrate a birthday, but it wasn't a huge to-do. And so we have continued in that way, and I've never wanted a huge to-do, but anyway, I don't know, that was an aside, but are you huge birthdayers? Go more power to you if you are, but more power to you if you're quiet birthdayers too. It doesn't mean you love your people any less. It just means you're not huge birthdayers. Whatever works for you is great. But so the shortbread, I don't know, I've always been really intimidated by the shortbread. This is the first time I've ever done I used the King Arthur shortbread recipe. This is the first time I've ever done the press into the pan shortbread. It was very easy. And then I also really enjoy being able to use a quilting ruler and a pizza cutter to cut the shortbread because I just find it enjoyable. So there's that. So thanks for coming over. I can see you because you're close enough. I can see your face. I just can't see you if you sit way over there. So today's episode is probably going to be a little short. There's not a ton of crafting because, sometimes that just happens. Okay, a few things I did want to share with you. Okay, so admin. Shop stuff. There won't be a shop update until 2021. And I don't know when it'll be. I'm guessing the second Friday of January, but I don't know for sure. So that's tentative. If you're interested, pencil me in. We'll talk more about it later. Patreon prizes we'll have them probably in the next podcast, in the next regular podcast. I'm hoping to do a bonus episode between now and then, but in the next regular podcast we should have Patreon, and we're doing 2021 tea towels with the sweater calendars. They're very cute. Okay, and when I say Patreon, I mean patron prizes. So if you are a patron of the podcast, whether that be on Patreon, PayPal, Ko-Fi, whatever, I am so appreciative. And also, oh my gosh, let me say a big thank you / apology. I think I got confused on my thank yous. A couple of people sent lovely packages, and I foolishly reorganized, and I think I thought I had sent you a thank you, but then after I reorganized, I think I realized I didn't send a thank you, or at least the fear that I didn't send a thank you crept into my mind. But by then, I didn't have your information. So if you're from Montana and you sent me a beautiful package which included a Shetland book, thank you so much. If I did not send a thank you, I apologize, but I was very thankful. And it's very enjoyable, and it's next to my chair, and it's lovely, and it was greatly appreciated. That was administrative. Okay. Okay, one thing I wanted to share with you. I meant to share with you last week and I totally forgot. Do you remember, I think it's now been 2 years ago, right? But it seems like yesterday, but also 100 years ago. I shared with you at that time I had fairly new, I had a bird feeder that had a peanut feeder on it. And I don't know why I'm looking for this video. If you remember, you remember. If you don't, you don't. It is probably on my Instagram feed. Oh, that's why I was looking, because I was going to show you the picture that I just posted. Oh my goodness. And so anyway, it was a snowy day, or it had just snowed, and I was looking out the window and I enjoyed watching. It was a red-bellied woodpecker that was really into the peanut feeder. And so I was looking at and all of a sudden I noticed, at first I thought, what is that? And then I was looking and I was realizing I was seeing its tongue go out into the peanuts. And I was like instant brain explosion, because its tongue was so long. So then I proceeded to spend like the next 2 hours, I don't know, trying to capture the ridiculously long woodpecker tongue on film and video for y'all, because it was just fascinating to me. Well, the other day, my local park, which is Eagle Creek Park, which is one of our city parks in Indianapolis, is actually one of the largest city parks in the country, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They have an ornithology center, because there's actually a bird sanctuary within the park. They posted a thing about woodpecker tongues. Did you know? I didn't know. I didn't investigate further when I saw this crazy thing about its tongue. Not only do they have crazy long tongues that can stick out, but that tongue actually is crazy long because it goes back into their skull and is actually part of what cushions their little brains when they peck on the trees. So the Ornithology Center posted. I'm not wearing glasses, so I have no idea if this is focusing for you or not. Okay. So how crazy is that? That woodpecker tongue. What is that about? It's crazy. feel like I'm just like not grounded into our conversation. I don't know if it's because it's early in the morning or because I couldn't see you, so I put my glasses on. Now I'm gonna put the Lolo bar. Maybe that'll help. I love this is Lolo bar Winter's Bliss. Is that what it's called? Winter's Bliss, yeah. Absolute favorite. Okay, so it's too distracting. The glare. Oh, I don't know what it smells like, but I love it so much. It's like, I don't understand. Like, I like the evergreen one. I love that one because it smells like trees. Oh my gosh, by the way, my husband, so occasionally I break down, and by occasionally I mean literally every time they offer them. Mrs. Meyer's Clean Day or whatever it is has like the seasonal scents, and they offer Iowa Pine dish liquid. I love it because it smells like a pine tree. The other day, my husband's in there and he was washing a dish. It's the first time we'd had it out. And he's like, wow. He's like, whoa. This dish liquid, he's like, something about this smells just like Christmas. Like, he was really like, whoa. I was like, honey, it's literally made to do that to you. It's like, well, I don't know what it is. I was like, it literally is meant to smell like Christmas trees. It's really funny when you have the person, like, he doesn't do any, like, not only does he not do any grocery shopping, he just doesn't do any, like, actual shopping. Like, so, like, it's just not his thing. Like, I mean, it's not my thing either, but somebody's got to do it. But like, so like, cause he gets, so like, it's funny cause he'll either be like really put off by the fact that there's like 900 dish liquids. Cause I mean, I get put off by that too. But then like, it's also fun that he can then experience the magic of the one really fun one. Anyway, whatever. But anyway, Winter's Bliss. Oh, it smells so good. I don't know what it smells like, but it's magical. I feel like in my brain, I tell myself that it smells like candied pineapple. I don't even know what candied pineapple smells like because I don't think I've ever been near candied pineapple. And like Christmas trees and something else. I literally don't think I've ever had candied pineapple because I don't think I would want it because pineapple's already so sweet. I can't imagine like candying it, but whatever. In my brain, that sounds festive. It smells really good. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so just briefly though. Oh my gosh, I'm like, let's talk about fun smelling things. Here's a bummer. But it was really interesting. My dear friend Corey, who's Corey the Girl in Ravelry, she was listening. She suggested this podcast, and it was to say it was interesting was really ridiculous, but it was. It was the Ezra Klein Show, which I think I've listened to before, but I'm not a regular listener to. But apparently I should try. And he was hosting Vivek Murthy, who was a former Surgeon General, but also is going to be who's co-chairing Biden's incoming coronavirus task force, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a previously recorded podcast, and it was a re-air that they did on November 23rd. So that's how you can find it if you're interested. And it was a podcast all about loneliness and talking about loneliness as so it's specifically called Vivek Murthy on America's loneliness epidemic. So it was talking about loneliness as a public health epidemic. So they briefly talked about the loneliness and how it actually acts on the body as a disease. So it acts on the body as not just as a psychological entity's not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't just act on the body in a psychological way, but acts on the body in physical ways, which, I mean, I think we know that that there is no real distinction between those two things, but whatever. Maybe we're just learning that more and more now. But it was so interesting, and it really did spark off this whole thing. I mean, I think, you know, it's especially, I mean, I think it's always really important to talk about around the holidays, but obviously, especially this year, as so many people are struggling with enforced isolation, rather than, you know, solitude. Like, maybe, you know, you might choose to be by yourself, but, you know, being forced to be in isolation. And it was just so interesting. And again, it was recorded certainly before the coronavirus, so it wasn't talking about that, but it was just talking about people being lonely in general, and, like, you know, are we lonelier now than we were before social media? There's actually no indication that we are, but I thought that was actually interesting in and of itself. But there's also, like, it's very difficult to measure loneliness, because obviously it's so subjective, but also because culturally it's very hard to measure, because culturally we have different understandings of what loneliness is, and, like, we have different there's different, like, for example, if I live with family, I may not be willing to say that I am lonely, because it somehow implies that my family is not giving me what I need, and therefore that they are lacking. Like, that's just one very small component. But do you know what I mean? So, like, there's all of this, like, cultural, social dynamics that make it so hard to, like, even, like, drill down into what loneliness is, and what it looks like for different people. There's a lot of, like, gender differences in loneliness, and determining, you know, how people are experiencing that. Anyway, I definitely have something that I want to learn more about. I'm almost embarrassed to admit that I had not really. I feel like I do have an understanding that people feel isolated. I think we see that. I think we see that a lot with increasing people's feeling of violence, and just in general, like, breakdown of community and stuff. But to like, actually, like, drill it down to, like, such a specific feeling of loneliness that, like, seems like it's that it makes it, like, about one person. I hadn't really kind of thought about it in that way. And so it was very interesting for me to think about. And so then that sparked off, like, a whole different thing about, like, what loneliness is versus what solitude is, because I am a very, like, I enjoy solitude quite a lot, and I'm very fortunate that I do not feel lonely very often, and I am so lucky that and I'm sure part of that is because of this, like, lovely interaction I have with you guys, and I'm so lucky because that's so rare. So I'm so thankful that I have that very rare gift, and I think that that's probably, like, a big part of why I don't feel lonely, even though I am not around, like, physically people. So I'm very thankful for that. Like, I know sometimes you say that to me, like, in comments or in DMs or whatever, but and I don't often say that to you, but because I guess I don't always think about it in that way, because you're not, like, right here. But I that has to be part of that reason, right? Is that I have you to think about. Like, that seems strange because you're more than one person, but I do have you to think about, right? Like, I have you to think about in terms of, like, oh, I need to tell them about this and I need to tell them about that. And like, and it's part of like the form of a day is to like think about that. So even though you're kind of like this amorphous entity, like you are still like a point of contact in that way. And so I'm very thankful for that. It's definitely unique. And it's definitely unique to this time that I live in, and I'm very appreciative of it. And I definitely have felt lonely at different times of my life, for sure. So I'm very thankful for that. Excuse me. And so then that was like, okay, so what is that feeling of solitude, that feeling of feeling alone, but not feeling lonely? And so where did that go? Like, I don't know if I think they were starting to talk about it. Oh, that was another thing they said. So it was so interesting. They were talking about like loneliness as like not the disease, but as the symptom of, so like if you're hungry, hungriness is not the disease. It's like the symptom of your body needs food. It's telling you like, hey, I'm having this problem. You need to feed me. And so that talking about like loneliness is not like the actual thing that's happening. It's not a weakness. It's just alerting you to this state that is requiring you to have this interaction, whatever it might be for you specifically. I thought that was really interesting. So I highly recommend it. It sparked off all these other thoughts for me. I need to re-listen to it again. But it put me into this thought about like, and so then like this other thing came up with like, I was looking for, because we had that discussion last time about like journaling and like poetry zines and like what is this feeling of like needing poetry. And I thought about it and I was like, maybe this like, I mean, I'm saying poetry, but like maybe that poetry is like a code for needing more solitude. And by solitude, I mean like actual like active time of reflection and thought. Because the other thing that he talks about, Vivek Murthy talks about in the loneliness podcast, is that he's talking about like we have removed times of solitude. We have removed times that we are actually alone with our thought in a productive way. Like we think, oh, well, we've got like 5 minutes we've got this 10 minutes in the commute. Like we should be answering emails, or we should be catching up on that podcast, or we should be like, we have this cult of productivity that we need to be using that time. We need to be efficient in every way. And that's another reason that we sometimes feel lonely, is because we are using that time that we could be connecting with people like our family, or like the person next to us on the train, or they specifically even talk about grocery delivery, or like grocery shoppers. Like you think, oh, that's amazing, that's going to save me so much time. But it also chops off like the moments of these like humanizing interactions that we have with each other. It also can chop off some of the dehumanizing interactions we have with each other. Let's give that credit. But it can also it can chop off that moment you have with the cashier that you're talking about, something that's like trivial or whatever, but that you have like a moment of connection with that person. Or, you have a connection with the person in the aisle behind you where you're talking about something or other. You know what I mean? Like it increasingly removes those small points of contact, or that, if you do have a grocery that's small enough and local enough that you see the same person, and like you have like, your brain can recognize like, oh, like that's a moment of comfort, and that you recognize that person. So we're trying. So like we're like, so not only are we feeling lonely, whether we're around people or not, we're also removing what could be beneficial from being alone. These moments of solitude, these moments where our brain can essentially, kind of defrag and like make sense of what's happening around us. We are using, and we extend that even into our homes, where we're, we may not be making the connections with our families or the people in our community of friends or what have you, because we are distancing ourselves from them in some way. Just there's lots and lots of stuff in there. Lots and lots of stuff. And just, and I know that, so the thing that sparked off in me was like, okay, so like, what is this weird thing that like this whole like weird poetry bubble like came up in me? And it's like, is that like actually my brain telling me like, you need to have more solitude? Because at the same time, the universe put into my path this May Sarton. Do you remember her? I had this moment where I did not remember her. I was looking for something else on my, I'm so sorry. With the heat coming on, I'm having like some respiratory like in high school, I think it had to be in high school. In high school, I was real serious. Were you real serious in high school? I was real serious in high school. Real serious. I took myself 137% serious. I think I read Plant Dreaming Deep in high school. I can't read anything now. My brain is so fragmented. It's out of control. But anyway, but I had forgotten completely about it. I could not tell you anything about that book now at all. But I had completely forgotten about it, and I was looking for something else. I think I was looking for journaling. That's exactly what it was. I was looking for journaling books on my library's like ebook resource, and her book, Journal of a Solitude. That's right, because that's the word the journal came up, and I was like, why does her name sound so familiar? I was like, and I'm horrid. Like my brain is like a sieve for names. It's really not good at holding on to that information. And it just like was like just tumbling. Finally, I finally like went and was like, okay, I'm giving it. I'm going to research it and figure out what it is. Research. I'm going to Google it for 3 seconds. And then I was like, oh. So then that like sparked a whole thing. And then the Journal of a Solitude. And so like just reading briefly about her, and I was like, maybe this weird poetry desire is like an actual, because what is poetry but solitude, right? Like it is, like that's what it is. It's like, it requires you to reflect, to like take time to sit with. Not that it can't be a community experience, but I think 98% of the time, 90% of the time, at least in the culture that I am brought up in, it is originally a solitary experience, and then it might become a community experience. But it requires solitude, right? It requires that. And so like maybe that weird like bubble of like that want is like a symptom of that, as a symptom of like, the brain wanting more solitude. What do you think? I don't know. It's just a thought. And then it was also interesting because I was talking about like what is the like quote unquote market for bad poetry. Okay, 2 things on that were so interesting, and I apologize, names again. But one of you in comments said a very interesting thing, which I loved. And you were talking about like, just because you can't be the best at something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, because when you think about something from an economic standpoint, which I love to think about things from an economic standpoint, I'm not going to lie to you. I think sometimes it's a very dangerous thing to do, but I still love it. Because whatever, it can get us into sticky situations. Hence trickle down economics. But anyway, but I love to think about it from an economic standpoint. But because she specifically stated like there are countries that don't manufacture something. They're not the best at manufacturing something, but they're okay. They're good at they're okay at manufacturing something, and that is actually vital. It's like you need them. Like you need them to manufacture, and not only do like is it okay for them to manufacture it, like in terms of like profit and like financial systems, but it's also important for the market to have that. And so I thought that was so interesting. So I love that. Steps. But then another interesting point was raised, like, well, why do you need an audience for the poetry? Like, why can't it just be for you? And this one was interesting to me too, because I feel like that is my natural inclination, right? My natural inclination is to say to myself, well, you should just do this for you. Why would you even need somebody to look at it? And there's a couple of different things that sparks off in my head. I don't know if you feel this way or not. So part of me is getting to the point, I think, where I can say, I admire that in other people, but it doesn't have to be me. Right? Like, I do think that is such a pure form of being, that you can create art or create whatever it might be only for yourself. I think that is so admirable. And like, I think that 10 years ago me would think that maybe even if I couldn't do that, it wasn't worth doing. Does that make sense? Even like if that wasn't my, like maybe if that wasn't my goal, like if my goal was not just to make it for me, then it wasn't pure enough, or it wasn't right, or it wasn't true. But I think now I'm in a place where I can acknowledge that I can really admire that, but that doesn't have to be the way it is. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can also really admire somebody who is creating but wants an audience. Or maybe even needs an audience. Yeah. For whatever reason. Whether it is just to communicate some thing, I don't know, but that was interesting. That was really, I was like, I hadn't really thought about it until you said it, well, like, why do you need an audience for this? And it was like, initially I had this like reaction of like, I don't know, I just had this like defensive reaction of like, but I think the reason that's why I felt defensive was because I was like, I really did believe that I should not have to have somebody. And I don't know, maybe I don't need anybody to read anything. Maybe that was just this weird blip. Because, I'm kind of like when I'm sharing with you, it is, somebody said like, well, isn't this your journal? Well, it kind of is. It's a slightly edited form of my journal. Like, I'm not telling you everything. And sometimes that's a weird thing about our discussions here is like what is that line of like, what is too much? But But then that gets into that whole thing about like, what is that? Like, so is that resistance that I have against journaling that it doesn't have a product? Excuse me. Like, I mean, yes, like it has an abstract product, right? Like it's kind of like, it's a groundwork, right? Like for whatever reason, it's part of something else, no matter what it is. Even if it's not like a writing product, it's just part of whatever it might be, like your just brain product, but it has like an abstract product. And it's, look at me, I'm even talking about it in terms of like a manufacturer, a consumeristic, or like a capitalistic system. Like, and like, I'm like, is part of my resistance to taking the time to journaling, is it partly because I don't, like, I'm not, there's not a product. So I'm like, well, I'm devaluing it for myself because of that. I don't know. Is that the reason that I'm hesitant to write my bad poetry? Is it because if there's not an audience or if it's not a product, then it's not worth the time? I don't know. Is that why I feel like I need to make my zine? Is because it has to be a product to be worth the time to make it? I don't know. Like I'm not sure what is in here. Like, I don't know. Is it because is the fact that I want to share it because I actually want to communicate? Or is it because it needs to be a thing that I make in order to make it worth doing? I don't know. Where are you? Where are you? I don't know. Is that enough ridiculousness? I was like, this is going to be like a 15-minute podcast. I think I just talked for like 20 minutes about nothing. Welcome to the show that I do. Okay, let's talk about some things. Touching things. Touching you. Ba-da-da. Okay, sorry. Quilt. Okay, so last time I showed you my quilt top, I have now quilted it, but I'm still working on my binding. Okay, which may never get done. Not true. Okay, so I showed you my backing, right? No, I hadn't done anything. So here's my backing. Isn't it cute? I can't remember what line of fabric this is from. It has little houses in it. I don't remember it other than that. My binding is also from the Holly Berry by Corey Oder. And here is, I decided, I'll show you close because it hasn't been washed yet. So you get an idea of what it looks like before it's washed. I decided to do a grid quilt because I follow, oh my goodness, I just love everything she does. On Instagram, I gotta look because I'm not sure. It's like EGM or EMG. EGM Quilted. Everything she makes is like the cutest. Like, it's ridiculous. Look at this. I want to make this so much. This is a new Then Came June pattern, and I can't remember what it's called. It's called the Campfire Glow Quilt. Ugh, I gotta make it. It's just 9 patches and stars. But look how freaking cute it is. What? But anyway, she does... That was an aside. She does... Oh my gosh, and look at this. She just posted this quilt top she did that's all just neutral flying geese. What? I want to make that. What? By the way, those blocks that are like white looking, those are actual flying geese. They're just white. They're just like light, super light neutrals. I love a woman who will, or a person, I love a person who will make a super low contrast flying geese. By the way, if you don't make quilts, flying geese are not the easiest. And like, to make a super low contrast one, oh, it is. Anyway, she does a lot of grid quilting and it's so cute. Here's an example. Again, I'm sorry, I can't tell if the camera's focusing because I don't have my focuses on. Anyway, I just think it's so cute. So I decided that I was going to do that with this. Now, my quilting is not perfect, and that is not something that I care about. I want it to be roughly gridish. But some of the things are rectangles. Most of them are squares. I'm fairly good at straight lines because I don't know if you know this, but I have a shop where I sew things for a living. And those things all involve a lot of straight lines. So I'm pretty good at sewing a straight line. But what I'm not as great at is making sure that those lines are equidistant from each other. Now, before you tell me, I know there's like 9,000 ways to make sure those lines are equidistant from each other. But quite frankly, I just take the easiest route, which is using the little like bar thing that's on my walking foot. And sometimes I just don't actually do it because sometimes I'm like, well, it's kind of close to a seam. Yeah, I'd like to fit this one in here, you know, so it's just like, it's just a suggestion in my head because I don't really care that much. So what I'm saying is, A, I know they're not perfectly equidistant from each other. And B, if you don't care that they're equidistant from each other, you don't have to. Just giving you permission to also not make them perfectly gritty. Like if you're like, oh, I've always wanted to try that grid thing, but I don't think I can make them perfectly gritty. Guess what? You don't have to. Make them grid-ish, and it's fine. Grid-ish is fine. Because you know what? No, but, I mean, if somebody's looking at it like this, they're going to find a problem somewhere else anyway. So, but I wanted to show it to you what it looks like before I wash it. Because also, once you wash it, I just totally bit my cheek. Once you wash it, it's going to also hide even more because it gets all crinkly and stuff. But so that's what it looks like. By the way, I have now done, what, several of these things. And just realized I've been doing the binding on all of them wrong. Because I've done binding on clothing. Apparently you don't do it the same way as you do it on a quilt. I just realized it. I was like, I don't want the binding on this one to be as thick as it's like as wide as it's been on the other ones because I don't want it to cover up a bunch of this square. Excuse me, of the edge. So I was like, oh, I wonder how narrow I should make the binding. So I was looking it up and it's telling me that I should make it 2 inches if I want the binding to show like a 1/4 inch. And I'm like, it's like mathematically that's not making sense to me at all. And I'm just like, I can't figure out it's not possible. So then I watched a video and I was like, oh, that's why it's possible because I've been doing it completely wrong this entire time. Because I've been doing it more like you do it for clothing than like you do it for a quilt. So, that's fun. I mean, it's fine. It works just fine. But this does look a little bit better. This looks a little tidier. So here it is. I've got the back tacked down so I'm just doing the back by hand. That's why it's taking a long time. But anyway, I'm very pleased with how it turned out. So I just need to wash it. And I'll try to remember to take a picture of it when I put it on the table so you can actually see like the whole of it in one photograph. Oh my gosh, I'm such a mess, y'all. Such a mess. If you're new to the podcast, you might not know that I also, when I learned to knit, I knit a whole sweater wrong. Like I twisted my stitches. Because I crocheted before I knit, and so when you crochet, you wrap your yarn the other way. So I knit an entire sweater with my yarn wrapped the other way. That's, So, I mean, it makes sense that I would have done it wrong, because that's just how I do things. Bam. I'm like, I like to jump in all the way and do things wrong for a while. Okay, so let's do some... Oh, I left Pebbles socks over there. Okay, 1 second. I'll be right back. Bam. Okay, so finished objects. I finished some bed socks. So these are just 2-ply. They are just worsted weight. I held a strand of opal and a strand of West Yorkshire spinners. So the opal was variegated, the Yorkshire spinners was solid. I knit them on US 3s, and I just did 48 stitches, 2x2 ribbing with a heel flap. If you're looking for a worsted weight sock pattern, Tin Can Knits Rye socks. They have a garter panel at the front, but you could make them 2x2 rib pretty easily. You might want to knit one. I like the socks with the garter panel in the front. They're really nice because they kind of, if you look at this distance is significantly longer than this distance. So it's great because garter crunches this up. And so it doesn't knit on, it fits on your foot very nicely. So if you're looking for if you're a newer knitter and you've never tried socks, worsted weight socks are a great way to try them out. There's fewer stitches. They go a lot faster. And if you want, you can hold your sock yarn held double, or you can use a worsted weight yarn, whatever works for you. But this is a nice way to do it because if you've got, if you're like most of us and you have some extra sock yarn hanging out, or if you want to make like monster socks, this is a great way to do it. Because then what you can do is, if you're holding your yarn double, it's really easy to just kind of stagger it. So you're holding A and B together, you run out of A, you put in C, you're holding B and C together, you run out of B, you put in D, you're holding C. Do you know what I mean? It's easy to just fade them through. And then it's a great way to use up your stash of sock yarn, or whatever. So, finished those. And then I finished by Marceline Smith. That's her pattern name. Hey Brownberry, who's a podcast. Her Pebbles and Pathways socks. These are knit with Quince and Company Chickadee in the honey colorway. So the pattern is written for fingering weight, but I just wanted I really like sport weight socks. I never leave my house. So very rarely do my socks actually need to fit into my shoes, and I have a lot of those. So especially when I'm trying to knit some non-superwash, non-nylon socks for everyday life, sport works out great. Chickadee is a great yarn in theory for it because it has lots of strands. We'll see how these wear. That's my thought anyway. But do you love them? Also, honey is the best color in the universe. Okay, maybe not, but pretty close. How cute are they? Again, I love the garter in the front. How cute, right? I'm so excited about wearing them. These are toe up. I think I just need to cast on another pair. So they're great because one of the things that's great about them is that because you have your garter ridges and your little cable, your garter ridges help you to keep track of when you need to twist your cable. So that's perfect. It's very easy to tell when you're going to need to twist your cable, right? That's because Mar's super clever. She's a super clever human. I kind of am a little bit in love with them. I'm not going to lie. Why did I let these take so long to finish? I don't know. That's weird because I really love them and I enjoyed knitting them. You know what? Things just happen. Ebb and flow. Ebb and flow. Okay, so then on the bed sock front, I'm working on a couple other pairs. These are all similar but different. So this pair is knit with a skein of MalabrigoMadelineTosh single ply. And then Dyeabolical Targhee. So this is the 90% superwash Targhee, 10% nylon, which is my favorite fingering weight sock yarn. So Knit Spin Farm uses this one, Woolens and Nosh uses this one, Dyeabolical uses this one. I'm sure there are lots of other folks who use this one, but those are the ones that are immediately coming to mind. It is my favorite. Sorry, I'm having tangling difficulties. Gus may have gotten a hold of this one this morning. He's done so much better about getting a hold of yarn, but occasionally I think this one was just an an accident. Like, I think he just got it on his foot. So anyway, before, I don't need to do that. Here's the finished one. So this one is a little different. I did 2x2 rib, but I just did a broken rib. So 2x2, 2 rows of 2x2 and 2 rows of stockinette. Again, 48 stitches. So you can see better what the texture looks like. And so again, another one where you have, this is just, again, this is strand of variegated and a strand of solid. I feel like this one was called like Thunder Boomers or something like that. And then I have one more pair because, hello, it's holiday times. Okay, I'm just going to have to deal with that later. And this one is also a strand of Dyeabolical, and I apologize, I do not know what this colorway name is because it's definitely gone. And then also a skein of MadelineTosh in the single ply. So MadelineTosh Light or whatever it is. So that basically what that is it allows these to be super wash, but it makes them worsted. I kind of like putting the single ply in with the other yarn because it makes it a little bit poofier in my head. And so I'm thinking it will help them to be, help trap a little bit more air, helping them to be warm. It's also just a factor of like what yarn I had that kind of went with, that like went together. I won't lie, I was a little bit sad to give this yarn up, but at the same time I was happy to make the socks. So yeah, so there's that one so far. So I'll try to take pictures. These will be gifts, but I'll try to take pictures before I gift them away. I'm knitting both of these on all 3 of those bed socks are on worsted weight US 3s. And this is the same texture where it's 2 rows of 2x2, 2 rows of stockinette. I do 12 rows for the cuff, 10 bumps for the 12 rows for the this part, and then 10 bumps for this part, and then knit to the length you need. Yeah, I really like this combination, how it worked out. Isn't it pretty? I also just really like how the colors work when you hold the 2 yarns together. I'm a project bag maker, and I just have them jammed in the same bag. Okay, so then Merri Molly did get a sweater. Oops, sorry, Merri. So here she is in her sweater. Her sweater is knit with Barrett Woolens. That's what it is, right? I was given a gift card by a dear friend. It's their sport weight that's spun at Harrisville. And then there's just a single ply of some MadelineTosh, I think it's whatever. I have a single ply of white speckly yarn held together with a mohair to give it some extra fuzz. So there she is in her sweater. Right? And then I've started her little skirt overalls, but I haven't gotten very far. So her skirt overalls are going to be in one of my favorite yarns ever, Swan's Island Sport. It's a Rambouillet. I love this yarn so much. So this is going to be her little skirt with braces. I know it's a baby so far, but like, do you love it? Oh, somebody was like, I think Merri told me that she needs a hand spun sweater, and she totally told me that too. I definitely heard that. But I did also really want to make the colorwork sweater because it's so silly to have a tiny animal with a colorwork sweater. But by the way, this is just knit with slip stitches. It's not knit like with a stranded technique or anything. And so sometimes I don't like to knit with slip stitches because I feel like it takes longer. I'm like, why not just knit this stranded? But it's nice for a little circumference to do the slip stitches because it's just a little bit less fiddly. So if you're looking to make this and you're like, oh, I don't want to, it's just with slip stitches. You don't have to know how to knit stranded technique or anything like that. So she'll get her braces sometime after Christmas. And then one last thing. Oh, I'm the worst. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, to verify. By the way, I just wanted to show you because it's so cute. Molly's sweater, Mary Molly's sweater, is knit with Woolens by Barrett. And can we just discuss how stinky cute this tag is? That's the color Belle. Like, I love this tag. And so then the last thing I have to show you is Malabrigo Caricol. This is the colorway Pearl. So it's this yarn that is like a super loose single, and then it's plied with a black string, like, so it's one loose ply of lavendery, smoky lavender, and then 2 plies of like a string essentially that are cross plied across it. And right? So usually I'm not one that's like, oh, I need a quick gift, because I didn't actually get this specifically for a quick gift. I just got it because I thought the recipient would really like this yarn. But this is the Elphaba hat, which is by Kristel Nieves, or Nieves, Nieves. And it is a free hat written for Malabrigo Rasta, I believe. And I haven't knit with Malabrigo Rasta for quite some time, but I believe that it is significantly chunkier than this. So the hat pattern suggests 13s and 15s. I usually go down 2 needle sizes, so that would be 11 and 13. And what I did is I actually went down to a 9 and a 10.5. And I don't think I would have gone any bigger because, I mean, you can still definitely see through it. So, excuse me. I actually saw this pattern because somebody else, I did a search under this yarn to see patterns that people had used. Let's see, what was I going to say? Oh, so I found this pattern because somebody used this specific yarn, but I cast on, even I increased 4 stitches that more than were suggested. It was still way too small, so I actually ended up casting on 12 stitches more than the pattern suggested. And again, and my gauge actually wasn't off from my measurement. But, you know, sometimes that's just, with a bulky yarn, it's kind of hard to get gauge measurements that are accurate because it is such a factor of like stretch and blocking and things like that. I did not block my swatch. So that could have been the factor that changed it. But anyway, so I think it's okay now. You know, it feels good. The recipient is a smaller human being, so she probably has a smaller head. I have kind of a giant noggin. And I tend to like my hats loose. So I tend to say that if it doesn't look like a baby's sweater, it's probably not going to be a good hat for me. So I think this will be okay for her. But anyway, so this yarn is fun to knit with. It's so weird because I'm knitting on 10.5s. And it was like when I went to get my cables for my needles, I had to use the large ones. Because if you're using Chalgoos, if you're using the 9s or above, there's a larger gauge cord. And I was like, dude, I cannot remember the last time I used this cord. It was all still like in the packaging. Like I had reorganized a while ago and I had still had it in the like package that I had put it in. I was like, oh, look at me. Everything else was like totally helter-skelter. But I was like, these are like enormous needles. And I know it's not like these are the biggest needles in the world, But again, as a loose knitter, I tend to go down needle sizes anyway, so I very rarely go up into 9s. I mean, again, very rare. So it's been quite fun. Oh my gosh, did you see? This has nothing to do with big needles or anything in general. But did you see that Rami Hill released a free pattern called Cup of Light? In case you're not on Instagram, I just want to show it to you because it's gorgeous. If you have some little twinkle lights hanging about and some white glue and some fingering weight yarn and you're having the White House itch, it looks like it could be perfect for you. I think I'm going to be making some. So basically so again, it's by Rami, R-O-M-I. It's Rosemary, but I believe that if you search under Rami, R-O-M-I, that's how it comes up. But either way, Rosemary Hill, it's called Cup of Light. It's a free pattern. And basically what you do is you just knit a really open gauge square. Then, just like those snowflakes you did, like that your grandparents did or whatever, you dip it in glue. And then you form it over, I think she uses a juice glass. And then you like twist the points. That's how she gets that fun little technique, that little texture on the tips, and let it dry. And then she uses something I never heard of called wine cork lights, because they have like the batteries in this little like doohickey like this, but whatever, just some sort of little fairy lights, or even like those little, battery operated candles or whatever. But I'm all like, but then you could make giant ones, and then you could have like the most ridiculous sculptures ever. And why hadn't I thought of that? Do you think we can make ridiculous light sculptures with this? I think we should. I mean, I don't want to challenge you because I know y'all are hardcore. And I'm definitely going to lose. But I think we should make some interesting light sculptures. Do you think we should make light sculptures? Right? That's the fun thing, right? It could be like any knitted texture you wanted. It could be any shape. You could make it whatever. You could throw like a whole strand of those fairy lights in there. They'll probably go on sale after the holiday. I feel like I'm gonna have to do it. Okay, now that I've said it, I'm gonna do it, right? Right. You could use whatever yarn you wanted. I would hesitate to use like any sort of like super high texture. Like I would not use like I would be afraid to use like a mohair because I think it would just mat down anyway. But I mean, I think we should do it. Right? I mean, you could, if you wanted to, like make your structure out of a regular yarn and then maybe like weave in. Now we're getting intense. You could oh my gosh, I'm excited. You could make your main structure out of a regular yarn, and then you could just like, oh my gosh, you could like tie in some bits of weirdness. I'm telling y'all, I think we need to make some Stephen West-esque light sculptures. They don't have to be 2020 Stephen West. They could be like 2005 Stephen West. Actually, I don't know when like the Boneyard came out. But like they could be like some 2010 Stephen West. They could be any era of Stephen West you want. They don't have to be Stephen West. They could be the era of you. But I mean, if they were, I wouldn't be upset. What could we do? Would you like to submit drafts? Oh my gosh, I feel like this could be our zine. Should we have a collective zine? Anyway, okay. Okay, that's enough. Do you want to play? Should we make this together? Okay, we need a hashtag. Okay, hashtag. What are these called? These are called Cup of Light. What should they be called? Hashtag knit in the light. It's my turn and welcome to, y'all. I gotta build a fence or something. Okay, so it's gonna be hashtag knit in the light. It's gonna like combine. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, so this is like the whole, like, okay, I'm gonna get new AG for you. It's the whole new like conjunction, right? Like this is supposed to be like our new, like since the Middle Ages kind of thing, right? Like, so it's like a whole combination of like light workers and knitting and sculpture and expression. It's going to be knit in the light. It's going to remind us that we are community and that there are people out there who are knitting in the light and who are trying to be their best selves and who are trying to be the best people they can be for their locals, people in their that they touch in their everyday life, and that they are trying to bring light wherever they can, and that even when sometimes it feels dark for you, that there are other people trying to be the light. They're trying to knit in the light, and that little reminder is going to be there for you. We're doing it, kids. All you need is a little bit of yarn and some Elmer's glue and some twinkle lights, some fairy lights. Okay, we're doing it. Okay. Okay. I hope that you will find a thread of curiosity. I hope that you will find something to be curious about in the coming weeks, and that it'll be a thread that you can follow for however long you would like. And maybe it'll be a thread that turns into something bigger, or maybe it'll be a thread that just fades out. But I hope that you can find that thread of curiosity, and that it'll feel bright and engaging, and it'll feel like it pulls you in, and you'll have that that woodpecker tongue is fascinating, not only because a woodpecker has a tongue that is so long, but because the woodpecker's tongue protects its brain against it hammering its head against the tree. That's fascinating. What do other... I hope you find a thread of curiosity in whatever it is. And I hope that at one point in the next 2 weeks, that when you feel a tiny little place of sunshine on your face or on your skin, that you feel like you are connected to all of us, because we all have that feeling of warmthness, a feeling of warmth on our skin too, and we all are connected, and we're feeling those vital rays, and they're getting stronger, they're giving us their energy, and our bodies are magically turning that into something that's propelling us through this whole thing in a magical and mystical way. I will talk to you next time.